The French Revolution was the period in French history that officially stretched from the meeting of the Estates General on May 5th in 1789 to the beginning of the Napoleonic rule in 1805. There were several aspects of French society, such as social, political, and economic, that contributed to the happening of the events during the Revolution. As a result of this, many political groups arose with the mission to battle for a better France. One such group were the Herbertists, led by populist journalist Jacques Herbert. Born 1757. The success and strength of Herbert as a leader was amplified due to the unfit absolute ruler during the time of the Revolution, Louis XVI. Herbert's paper, Leper Edition, was the outlet for his political opinion and can be held largely accountable for his political influence. The Herbertists were aware of the political nature of the Church, and their popularity is, to an extent, contributed to the fact that they took action against the power of the Church. However, the violence and radicalism of the Herbertists inevitably led to their downfall. Yet, they were successful as a political group, which all started with the strength of Herbert's leadership success. At the time of the French Revolution, France was subjected to an absolute monarchy under the rule of King Louis XVI until his death on 21st of January in 1793. Louis XVI was an extremely weak ruler in the sense that he was indecisive, weak-minded, and not respected as he did not offer France true guidance when they needed it most. This is because of their dire social, political, financial, and economic crisis. In fact, Louis XVI had further contributed to the financial calamity of France by his involvement with foreign policy such as the American War of Independence, where he supported the American troops financially and by sending over French men. Not only this, but he and his wife, Marie Antoinette, lived a lavish lifestyle which further contributed to the financial crisis in France. This made the people of France desperate for some form of reform and leader that would offer guidance, resilience, and strength, and instill motivation. This is part of the reason that Herbert's popularity grew so rapidly. As he was decisive and clear-thinking, this was a huge contrast to the type of authority people were experiencing from Louis XVI. It would also help that Herbert's name was not a foreign one to some of the people of France due to his occupation as a journalist. Jacques Herbert was the founder and editor of the extreme newspaper Leper Edition. His articles began to appear from September in 1790 to 1794. This paper was viewed as extreme due to the foul language used, slight mockery of controversial topics, and the theme of violence in order to appeal to members of the Third Estate, chiefly the sans-culottes. Another method that Herbert used in order to appeal to the readers from the Third Estate was by writing his articles in narrative style from the first-person perspective of Leper Edition, a fictional character depicted as an old working-class man. This character was created by Herbert as a means to express his political view and also target a specific audience. An old working-class man was a stereotype that many of the Third Estate could relate to. People, having gained this familiarization with Herbert through Leper Edition, gave Herbert solid grounds for success and leadership. With growing popularity, Herbert and his faction began to take action. The Herbertists' growing popularity led them to gaining political strength. One of the key ideals the Herbertists had was the de-Christianization of France. This stems from the fact that the Church was not only a religious institution, but a political one also. Their political authority was exercised by means of censorship over books, provision of poor relief, hospitals and schools, by keeping a list in the parish of all births, marriages and deaths. The Church's vast wealth and resistance to new ideas were some of the fundamental reasons why they were so unpopular with the people, which is what contributed to a long-term cause of the Revolution. Because of the depth of power the Church had, the Herbertists took revolt against the Church to an extreme, by attempting to convert the whole of France to a new system of worship called the cult of reason. This atheistic belief system had the ultimate goal of perfecting mankind through the attainment of truth and liberty. The notion had an extreme take on Enlightenment ideas and spread quickly in the year 1792. By November 10th in 1793, Notre Dame, a famous religious establishment, was converted to the cult of reason, an institution for the practice of cult of reason. The impact of this was the heightening awareness of the extremist nature of the Herbertists, which would eventually prove detrimental to their existence. It was the violence and the radicalism exercised by the Herbertists to achieve their ideals that led to their fated demise. The Herbertists were involved in the September massacres in 1792, in which 3 bishops and over 200 priests were killed by angry mobs. This was an outcry against the Church and its authority by Third Estate members trying to prove that they have authority of their own lives by taking somebody else's that were higher than them. This was a radical and violent approach to the attempt of lessening the authority of the Church, and the Herbertists had hoped it would contribute to the long-term downfall and eventually eradication of the Church. The Herbertists were also supportive of the politically verbal attacks against the Granton faction, a political group within the Legislative Assembly that campaigned for the end of the monarchy yet resisted the growing intensity of the revolution. Herbertists believed that the Granton faction, along with other revolutionaries such as Danton, Philippot, and Robespierre, were being too moderate in their approach to reform. These attacks and general extremist approach to the revolution from the Herbertists resulted in Herbert himself, along with fellow faction members, being executed on March 24th in 1794. Historian Simon Sharma says their view was an anarchic notion of popular government, always armed to impose the will of the people on its mandatories, and took form of support for unrelenting surveillance, denunciation, indictment, humiliation, and death. The background of an unfit ruler, Louis XVI, during the French Revolution is what contributed to the success of Herbert's leadership. His paper, Leper Edition, familiarized Herbert with the majority of French society and was another contributing factor to his popularity. He began to take radical actions in order to achieve reform. His violent and radical approach ultimately led him to the guillotine. However, despite the movement of the Herbertists being weakened after the executions, it still played a significant role in the French Revolution as it continued to advocate change in the religious spectrum of French society. The commitment to change and ruthlessness exercised to achieve change was something that shook the foundations of society at the time, and it forced people to consider not only that there must be change, but also how it must occur. This is the predominant legacy of the Herbertists.